Imagine walking into a small desert garden on a warm morning and seeing something that feels a little out of place. The soil looks sandy and dry. The air feels hot even before noon. And yet, standing there quietly in the middle of the yard is a small apple tree with healthy green leaves. A few young apples are even beginning to form on the branches. For many gardeners, that sight feels surprising. Apples usually belong in cooler orchards in places with soft rain and deep soil. They are not the trees most people expect to see thriving in dry desert air. But here it is. What makes the story more interesting is that this same tree struggled during its first year. The leaves burned in the heat. The branches barely grew. At one point it looked like planting it had been a mistake. Then the following season something changed. The tree began growing stronger. The leaves stayed green longer. The branches stretched wider. Eventually, it even began producing fruit. The surprising part is that the change came from one small adjustment. Nothing dramatic, nothing expensive. If you've ever tried growing apples in a hot or dry climate, you may have seen similar problems. The tree looks stressed, leaves curl, fruit falls early. It can feel confusing and discouraging. If that has happened in your garden, you're not doing anything wrong. Many gardeners see this exact pattern when they first try growing apples outside of traditional climates. What careful observation over several seasons revealed was a simple shift that helps apple trees behave very differently in dry environments. And once you understand what the roots are experiencing underground, the reason begins to make sense. Before explaining why this happened, it helps to understand something important about where apple trees come from. Apple trees evolved in climates that are usually cooler and more moderate than desert regions. They are used to soil that holds moisture for long periods of time. Rainfall arrives regularly. The ground stays somewhat cool, even during summer. In those conditions, roots grow slowly and evenly through deep soil. The tree can drink water gradually without much stress. Desert soil behaves very differently. The surface dries quickly. Temperatures rise fast during the day. Water can disappear before roots have time to absorb much of it. Because of that, the challenge is not always the heat itself. In many cases, the bigger issue is how water moves through the soil. When gardeners notice a struggling apple tree, the natural reaction is to water more often. That feels logical. A thirsty tree should need more water, but sometimes watering more frequently creates a hidden problem. You may see leaves turning yellow, branches slowing down, small fruit dropping early. The tree looks thirsty, yet extra watering does not seem to improve the situation. This is where many gardeners begin to feel puzzled. The key to solving the puzzle usually lies underground where the roots are growing. One of the most common mistakes gardeners make with apple trees in dry climates is shallow watering. When water is applied lightly and frequently, it only wets the top few inches of soil. The moisture stays close to the surface. Roots respond to that pattern very quickly. They begin growing toward the water source, which means they stay close to the top layer of soil. Unfortunately, that top layer is also the hottest and driest part of the ground. Under strong desert sun, surface soil can dry within hours. The roots remain trapped in a difficult environment where moisture disappears quickly. This creates a cycle that many gardeners recognize. The tree depends on frequent watering, but still struggles to stay healthy. It can feel like the tree is always thirsty. Over time, experienced growers began noticing something interesting. Apple trees behaved very differently when their roots were encouraged to grow deeper into the ground. Deeper soil tends to stay cooler. It also holds moisture longer, even during hot weather. But roots will only move downward if they find water there. That observation led to a simple technique that desert gardeners quietly began using. The adjustment was not a special fertilizer. It was not an unusual apple variety either. The change involved how water reached the soil. Instead of watering only the surface, growers created ways to send water deeper into the ground. Some used vertical watering pipes placed near the root zone. Others buried simple clay pots that slowly released moisture below the surface. Some relied on slow, soaking irrigation that allowed water to travel deeper before evaporating. The idea behind these methods is simple. Water arrives deeper in the soil first. When roots discover moisture below the surface, they begin growing downward to reach it. Over time, the root system spreads deeper and becomes much stronger. Once this happens, the tree becomes more stable during hot weather. The deeper soil layers stay cooler and lose moisture more slowly than the surface. As a result, the tree experiences less stress during the hottest days of summer. For many gardeners, this small change can completely transform how an apple tree behaves in a dry climate. But water depth was only part of the discovery. Another quiet observation surprised many growers. Most gardening books say fruit trees should receive full sun all day long. In cooler climates, that advice usually works well. But desert gardeners began noticing something slightly different. Young apple trees often grew better when they received a little protection from late afternoon sun. Not heavy shade, just a short break from the most intense heat of the day. Sometimes that protection came from nearby plants. Sometimes it came from a fence casting a shadow. Some gardeners used light shade cloth during the hottest weeks. With this small adjustment, the leaves stayed healthier and greener. The tree spent less energy recovering from heat stress. This idea may seem backward at first. After all, fruit trees are known for loving sunlight. But in dry climates, the balance between light and heat becomes very important. A small amount of afternoon protection can make a surprising difference. The soil itself also plays an important role. Many desert soils contain very little organic material. Without organic matter, water passes through quickly and disappears from the root zone. Roots struggle to hold on to moisture in these conditions. Adding compost or mulch can slowly change that situation. Mulch acts like a protective blanket over the soil. It reduces evaporation. It keeps temperatures more stable. It also supports tiny soil organisms that help improve soil structure over time. As organic material builds up, the soil begins holding moisture longer. Roots respond by spreading deeper and wider through the ground. That is why many successful desert orchards rely heavily on thick layers of mulch. It transforms dry, harsh soil into a much more welcoming environment for roots. Another factor that gardeners sometimes overlook is climate variation. Not all deserts behave the same way. Some deserts experience cold, winter nights. Others stay warm even during winter months. Apple trees depend on a period of winter chill in order to produce fruit. Certain varieties require many cold hours each season. Gardeners in warmer desert climates often choose low-chill apple varieties that need fewer cold hours. In cooler desert areas, traditional varieties may still perform well. Matching the tree variety to the climate often makes gardening much easier. While discussing desert gardening, it is also important to mention comfort and safety. Hot climates can be demanding, especially during summer months. Many gardeners feel tempted to work in the middle of the afternoon when they have free time. but desert heat can become intense very quickly. Early morning or early evening usually offers a more comfortable and safer time for garden work. Deep watering systems can also reduce the need to carry heavy watering cans or hoses. Once water is delivered slowly into the soil, the garden often requires fewer watering trips. Small adjustments like these help make gardening easier and more enjoyable, especially for older gardeners. After watching desert orchards for several seasons, many growers begin to notice a quiet pattern. Healthy apple trees in dry climates often share three simple conditions. Their roots grow deep into the soil, the ground around them stays protected with mulch, and the trees receive balanced sunlight rather than harsh, all-day exposure. When these three conditions come together, trees tend to settle into a comfortable rhythm. Instead of constantly fighting the environment, they begin adapting to it. What once seemed impossible begins to look surprisingly normal. That small apple tree standing in the middle of a desert garden becomes a quiet reminder of how adaptable plants can be when we support their natural habits. If you're comfortable sharing, I'm curious about your own experience. How often do you water your fruit trees, especially during hot weather? Every garden has its own story, and hearing those small observations can be helpful for other gardeners listening as well. In the end, growing apples in a dry climate often teaches a calm lesson. At first, the process can feel like a struggle. More watering, more adjustments, more effort. But with time and observation, many gardeners notice something simple. The garden often improves when we stop trying to do everything and instead focus on a few small conditions that truly matter, encouraging roots to grow deeper, protecting the soil from harsh heat, and choosing plants that fit the climate around them. Once those pieces fall into place, the tree begins doing much of the work on its own. Sometimes the garden improves when we simply step back and observe. And often the most reassuring discovery in gardening is this quiet truth: do less, get more.